Welcome to the Adventure Mechanics. I'm Chandler. In today's side quest, we'll be taking a look at another game with no reviews and seeing what went wrong. On the chopping block today, we have Justice for All. It was made in Unity and released in October of 2022 by Charles Wolfe. This appears to be the only game he released under his name. As you know, not having prior finished games or subsequent games in the pipeline isn't a good sign as a developer. From what I can find, this may have been a school project of some sort, and that would be in line with my time playing Justice for All. I think it's a bit optimistic to publish your school project on Steam, but it's certainly not unique, especially in the games with no reviews listings. I enjoy the enthusiasm, but if you're doing a commercial release, you need to up your level of polish. So what did the developer need to do to get this game into that state? But before we answer that question, what is Justice for All as a game? It's a platform shooter with a basic storyline and a variety of weapons and enemies to take out. Once you've taken out enough enemies, the level ends and you're on to the next one. Really a simple game, all things considered. So what's wrong with it? To be blunt, a lot. First of all, the artwork is actually just a series of asset packs. It's not a bad thing per se, since it allowed the designer to consider other parts of the game, like levels, enemies, and weapon design. But like any tool you use as a shortcut, you need to give it your personal touch and not just flip assets to make it your game. Thankfully, the assets used mostly work well together. There are a few glaring areas where it doesn't, though. The pixel art style in cutscenes completely clashes with the flash style of the gameplay. If the designer wanted to use both at the same time, they could have put a TV filter or something over the pixel art to try and blend it in with the flash artwork, or saying the pixel art parts are television broadcasts or something like that. There are some assets that, when put together, make it harder to identify what is and what is not actually a platform, leading to some situations where you'll jump up thinking you're going to land on a platform only for the platform to not actually exist. This makes the game so much harder to play than it needs to. And all that is needed to make this happen is to darken the background tiles while keeping the actual platforms bright. Not a huge deal breaker in the short time I've dedicated to this game, but I can easily see that putting the player down a death pit later in the game. It may be worthwhile to compare the artwork in this game with how old games like the NES's Rolling Thunder or its arcade precursor did it. I'm not just being an elderly millennial here, the fundamental gameplay between the two are essentially the same, and the limitations of an 8-bit system makes the level readability the main focus of the artwork. The paired issue with discerning which parts of the level you can actually use and which are just decor is how the player controls. It's awful, frankly. You stop immediately when you attack, eliminating any horizontal momentum you may have had beforehand, and that will kill you. The jumps are floaty, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it also makes the player feel like they don't weigh anything. It makes it feel like you're trying to move a balloon around the world instead of a freedom fighter. You have limited ammo, and I'll be damned if you know how much ammo you actually have. Your controls are hard-coded with no option to change to something more intuitive. And all of that coupled together, it makes it incredibly difficult to feel like you know what's going on in the game. You'll seemingly run out of ammo, grenades, and magical things to inflict range damage at random and be forced to use your knife. On one hand, it's nice to have a melee weapon in case you run out, but on the other, it's infuriating not knowing how much ammunition you have in any of your weapons in your possession. All this could have been mitigated by putting the ammo count on top of the weapons themselves in the UI, or putting the number above you after shooting, or any other way of bringing that information to the player. It then forces you to use this toothpick of a knife to try and poke bullet-spongy enemies that are in constant motion. So you either run into them and cause yourself to get hurt, or you trail them swinging at the air behind them like an idiot. It's not a great feeling. This could have been improved by allowing the player to move while swinging, but I fear it would have been more work to get it to feel right. Again, I'll point to Rolling Thunder as inspiration on how to get the game to feel better, with having the UI have life, bullets for each weapon, and controls that may be stiff, but they worked with the level design and enemies implemented in that game. Now let's talk about the enemies in Justice for All. They're basically red Koopas from Mario. Everyone moves back and forth, changing direction when they reach the end of their platform. Doesn't matter if they're a lowly melee animal, yes, there's animals in this game, or a heavily equipped boss on the level. They will only ever move back and forth, stopping to attack when they encounter the player in their collision radius. For a platform shooter, this isn't enough. There need to be more enemy behaviors, even if they aren't smarter for what's there. Ambush enemies, flying enemies, or even a slow chasing enemy would have been a welcome change to the behavior. Give me another move besides getting behind an enemy and shooting him in the back. And if the enemies are going to be respawning, telegraph it. Doors should open and dump a new enemy into the platform. Another should parachute from above, or just move in from off screen. I don't care. Make it more engaging than poof, another enemy is right where you killed one, and putting him back onto that platform. That's just lazy and bland gameplay. There's one boss enemy on each level, which is effectively your ammo sponge, that you must spend the majority of your weapon on. If you waste ammo on minions, you won't have enough to kill the boss. Then you're stuck with your knife and trying to kill him with that, with predictable results. Who are the bosses? Hell if I know. I just know I need to kill them in order to progress. To improve them, you could just give them a name above their health bar. That would motivate me at least a little bit to trying to kill them. Give your bosses importance. They should be something more than just a larger enemy pacing to and fro, soaking up all the shots and grenades you have with seemingly no effect. This is the main part of the game, and you should have explored much more than what little was in the game right now. All there is in this game is platform shooting. Make it more interesting. Please. The story is similarly bare bones. There's a few friendlies you can speak to, but you'll end up spending a silly amount of time trying to figure out how to communicate since the window to talk to them is so very small. They move around, much like the enemies, and you must be within that little tiny window to start the conversation. Chasing friendlies is not a fun experience. Widen that window to talk to them or stop them from moving. And it's not like they're giving much to the story anyway. The first level has a farmer acting as the worst tutorial I've ever seen. They're over there, practice a bit before moving on. That's all he says. Great advice, farmer. No notes. Couldn't ask for more. No story, no explanation of controls, just practice a bit. This is a waste of the friendly on level 1. If this game is being pitched as a story-rich game, this friendly should have been more than an afterthought to the developer. This story should be the driving force, or at least an interesting context on why I keep going from level to level, killing bosses. It's not even up to that latter, lower level in this game, unfortunately. Motivation doesn't need to be much, but I should care why I'm killing seemingly randomly armed people and wildlife. Why is the wildlife on the side of the elites anyway? I didn't think boars were smart enough to choose between sides in another species conflict, but they're right there with the bees, fighting one human for another human, though. It's actually kind of stranger to say out loud than I thought, but anyway, that's why you need to give your story at least some time in the oven. This one isn't even out of the metaphorical biscuit tube, though. The last part of the game that I can comment on is the music and sound effects. They're competent. What else should I expect from another asset pack, though? The tracks are a credit to their authors, being in line with the game, but not too interesting as to take the attention away from the gameplay. The sound effects feel worse, but that's because they don't have the impact I'd usually expect from a game with a lot of shots and explosions. They feel flat, somehow. Like they were meant for either a lighter game or one with more diverse soundscape where the louder shot or explosion would drown out the other important information. Needless to say, I think the designers should have spent more time juicing up their audioscape to make it feel like the player is in an oppressive world, like how Gears of War or This War of Mine do with their soundscapes. Heck, even looking at what Minecraft does in caves would be a good example. If you're making a fight against oppression, make it feel like it. Not a Kenny Assets bubble platformer, with weak explosions and anemic sounds for the shots. The question must be asked, is this game rightfully in the No Review Club? Sadly, I think it is. The developer could have done something more if they added more enemy types, focused more on the effects and how they work together, or leaned more heavily into the story, like the game Deadbolt did. Any of these could have elevated this game, but sadly they aren't present in this particular one. If Charles Wolfe wanted to see other, better implementations of this design, I would try playing some other older cinematic platformers, like Another World, Blackthorn, the Rolling Thunder series, and others. There's a lot to learn there, but most of it goes back to the idea of emphasizing the interesting bits of the game. And that means working in the movement and making it feel good. Getting more varied enemies and a better reason to fight them. Make each shot feel impactful and not use the first gunshot sound in your audio pack that fits the bill. Justice for All needs all of these things to be more than what it is. I hope that Charles Wolfe continues his work on games and learns from this particular one, but statistically he's probably done with publishing and Steam overall. That's about all that I am going to say about this game though. If you'd like something to add, leave it in the comments below or reach out to me on various social media as @JCSirron, SIRRON. I'd love to hear what you think of this game, this series, or anything game design related. This has been another Adventure Mechanics side quest. I'll talk to you next time. The intro and outro music are excerpts from Plinian, retro gaming version, royalty free. Music provided and produced by Lone Peak Music. Link in the description.